Mizuno is quickly becoming known as the brand of mystery shoes, but which of the two last mystery shoes is better, or which one is better for you? Let's compare the Neo Vista with the Neo Zen. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today we're going to be breaking down the differences between the Neo Vista and the Neo Zen so you can decide which one is best for you, or both. But if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps below. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of the comparison that are most interesting to you, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate it if you came back and watch the full video, as I put a lot of time and effort into these to make them as good as possible for each and every one of you. And if you aren't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video, which is typically going to be Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. But with the backlog of shoes I have right now, you may see some more extra videos. So make sure you have that on so you can be the first one to see those drop. Some quick disclaimers and disclosures. I was provided both of these shoes for free for the purpose of a review, but I was not paid for this video, nor was I asked to make any specific content. I'm never given any talking points. No one ever gets to watch the videos beforehand. All thoughts are entirely my own. Now, before we dive into the intended use of the shoes, I do want to give a note. If you watch my Neo Zen review, you will have seen this, but every time I post about a Mizuno shoe, I get a comment saying you're saying the brand name wrong and that it's Mizuno. Just a friendly reminder that this is actually a Japanese brand. And although the brand name has been Americanized or westernized, and many people here in the US may call it Mizuno, it is actually Mizuno because it is a Japanese last name and it is the name of the founder. That being said, like Adidas versus Adidas, I wouldn't say that one is necessarily correct or incorrect. Just know that the name is actually Mizuno, and this is coming from someone who is half Japanese and lived in Japan for basically 10 years. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of the shoe. The Neo Zen is going to be a little bit more of an up-tempo daily trainer, maybe lightweight daily trainer, and is made to be kind of your bulk mile shoe. So this can handle easy runs, standard runs, long runs, everything kind of along those lines, but isn't necessarily designed for workouts, though we'll get into it with the foam. I think it's bouncy enough to handle a lot of different types of workouts. On the other side, you have the Neo Vista, which is going to be your super trainer or your marathon training companion to the Wave Rebellion series. Basically, this shoe is meant to handle kind of the bulk marathon training miles, marathon workouts, like those 20-mile runs with 10 to 12 to 14 miles of marathon pace. That's what this shoe is primarily designed to do. And it's also a shoe that if you don't want an aggressive marathon shoe necessarily, you could wear this for your race. Now, personally, I think that there's more overlap in these two shoes than Mizuno intended, but we'll break down kind of the unique differences as we go through this comparison. Now, from a price perspective, the Neo Zen comes in at $150. Meanwhile, the Neo Vista comes in at $180. $180 for a super trainer is pretty typical. There are some that kind of go up to the $200 range, but most fall within that $170 to $190 range. So it's kind of right smack dab there in the middle. Meanwhile, the $150 price point is also pretty standard for an up-tempo trainer. Some are $140, $145, some are $160. So both of these kind of sit in the middle of their respective price ranges. From a specs perspective, the Neo Zen comes in at 8.3 ounces and 235 grams, and the Neo Vista comes in at 9.1 ounces and 258 grams. The Vista is going to be a little bit heavier overall, which can be pretty typical when you have kind of super trainer elements in a shoe, which we'll break down. Now, from a stack height, it might be hard to tell, but the Neo Zen comes in at 46 in the heel, 40 in the forefoot, and a 6mm heel to toe drop, versus the Vista has 53 in the heel, 45 in the forefoot, and an 8mm heel to toe drop. So the Vista, and again, it depends on how you kind of measure, but I got both of these measurements, I believe, from Running Warehouse, where they do independently measure. The Vista is going to have more stack in the heel and forefoot overall, and a slightly higher drop. The fit of these two shoes is going to be fairly similar. I think both fit a little bit long, so you may want to consider half sizing down. The main difference to me is that the Neo Zen is going to fit a little bit more snug or narrow in that midfoot, versus the Neo Zen is going to have a little bit more room in that midfoot overall. Toe boxes are going to be more voluminous, I think, in the Neo Zen, a little bit more streamlined in the Neo Vista. The Neo Vista, I don't think, is going to be wide foot friendly. The Neo Zen may be a little bit more accommodating overall. Like I said, I would consider half sizing down in the Neo Zen. I actually got a chance to run in my 10 and 10.5, where 10.5 is my standard. I actually prefer the 10, and I hear I'm not the only person who liked a half size down in the Neo Zen. Neo Vista, I did not try a half size down, so I can't speak to that, but I did find that it felt overly narrow. but also long. So it was kind of a little bit of an awkward fit for me overall. Now the material in the uppers is supposed to be the same. They're both supposed to be a knit sock material or a sock knit material, but I do think that there are some slight differences here in the upper. So for one, just visually as I'm looking to them, you can see that the Neo Zen is a little bit more wholly, or it's a little bit more almost of like a mesh instead of just a knit. So breathability wise, I did find that the Zen was a little bit more breathable, and that also it had less stretch in the upper. So one of my biggest gripes with the Neo Vista actually was that upper. I felt like there was too much stretch. So I didn't feel super locked into the shoe, and I couldn't quite get the lockdown I wanted. Part of that too is going to come with kind of the lacing here. It's just like these loops, so you're not integrated really directly into the upper. Like you just kind of almost have to squeeze this, and so I didn't feel like I could get really good lockdown in the Vista. Versus with the Zen, you can see there's kind of like a reinforced lacing system here, and then the laces actually go into the shoe as opposed to just into the loops, which allowed me to get a lot better lockdown on the shoe than in the Zen. So that was something that was really, really big to me. The other thing is, despite being more breathable, I found that this knit or this sock-like upper was a little bit more structured. It didn't have as much give other than right there in the tongue. And so you could get your shoe on, right? You were able to get the shoe on and slide it on and have a really nice sock-like fit. But with the Vista, it just felt a little bit sloppy to me overall. The Neo Zen, very similar knit sock fit, but I felt like the execution on the Zen was a lot better. Now, neither of them have basically any cushion in the upper. And so if you're wanting a little bit more plush experience, I don't think you're gonna get that here. That's not what the uppers are really built to do. They're supposed to just slide on and be an extension of you. And that's again, where I felt like the Neo Vista fell short for me, but the Neo Zen exceeded in just you not noticing the upper much at all. Now I did have a little bit of bunching in the upper of the Neo Zen, just around the tongue, just be aware of that, but it didn't cause any issues for me at all. Now moving to those midsoles, both of these are technically Mizuno Energy NXT, but to Mizuno, that refers more to the experience, I believe, and less to the actual materials used, because these are actually two different material midsoles. The Neo Zen is a TPU nitrogen infused foam, and it is very bouncy underfoot, right? It is soft, but it is bouncy. Meanwhile, over on the Neo Vista, it is a EVA nitrogen infused, I believe, and it is not super responsive to me. Like you do have some pickup, and you do have actually a fiberglass, it's actually a plant-based fiberglass plate in the shoe, and you can actually see it there through the outsole. So you do have more snap in the shoe, right? It's gonna give you a little bit more snap, a little bit more structure. I felt like the Neo Vista was like more of a smooth ride, not necessarily a super fast or like snappy ride. Like you're not gonna, despite having a plate, like this doesn't feel like the SC Trainer or the Endorphin Speed, right? Like this is more of a smooth, I think more of like a threshold style shoe, versus the Neo Zen was a very bouncy overall experience for me, very propulsive experience, and very smooth as well, but more bounce, more fun, more smooth, more soft kind of landing. Neither of these are going to be good for stability needs, but I find that the Neo Zen is a little bit more stable. One of the big things with the Neo Vista is it had kind of these cutouts, and so when you run, I felt like I did collapse. Like I felt like these were actually inherently unstable, versus the Neo Zen I didn't feel like were super unstable underfoot. Now the outsole pattern on both shoes is pretty much full coverage, and the shoe has done well for me. I haven't had like major slippage or anything, but I haven't tested either of them in like super wet or slippy terrain, so I can't tell you how they would handle that necessarily, but I feel like they get the job done, and I feel like the outsoles are fairly durable. Technically, the outsoles are a different material or a different rubber though. So on the Zen, it's the X10 rubber, and on the Vista, it's the G3 rubber. To be perfectly frank, I'm not sure the major differences between the two. They feel fairly similar overall. The G3 might be a little bit softer though. Now, as far as my pick between the two shoes, personally, I'm a big fan of the Neo Zen, and I wasn't a huge fan of the Neo Vista. Now, the Neo Vista was super, super popular, and I liked what they were doing with the shoe, and you can see how it bled into the Neo Zen and how it kind of inspired a lot of the elements here. In fact, when the mystery colorway of the Neo Zen was first seen, most people thought this was the Neo Vista 2, but it's not, right? It's its own individual trainer, and frankly, these two could be used in tandem in a rotation. So I don't necessarily think it's like an either or, but if you had to just buy one, for me personally, I would go Neo Zen. I know a lot of people though, again, who loved the Neo Vista, and they found that the plate was flexible enough, and it is a very flexible plate, but they found that the plate was flexible enough that they could use this for daily miles as well. For me personally, I stay away from any plate element on daily miles just because it does slightly or can be a little bit harsh on the feet. So there you go. That's my comparison of the Neo Vista. Two similar looking shoes, but two very different experiences overall. If you've watched this far, I sure appreciate you. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let me know what other comparisons you would like to see. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell so you get notified every time I drop a new video. And as always, I'll leave you with a question, which is, which do you prefer, the Neo Vista or the Neo Zen? Let me know down below. Thanks, everybody.